In 1945, Jack Benny introduced the world to what would become one of the most legendary gags in entertainment history, his vault. It was a fortress of absurdity, alarms blaring, guards stationed, booby traps rumored, all just for comedy. But while audiences laughed at the idea of Benny's extreme stinginess, few knew there was a real vault in his life too. Locked for 50 years after his death, it contained audio reels labeled, "Do Not Open." When finally played, these recordings revealed Jack's voice reflecting on mistakes, scandals, and secrets that could have ended his career. Jack Benny wasn't born Jack Benny. He entered the world as Benjamin Kubelski on February 14, 1894, in Chicago, though technically, his mother, Emma Saxes, had planned the birth in the city rather than their small hometown of Waukegan. She believed a metropolitan birth certificate would give her son a better chance at greatness. Emma was frail but fiercely determined. She had already decided that her son would one day perform in concert halls, violin in hand, impressing audiences around the world. Benjamin's father, Meyer, was more pragmatic. He had immigrated from Poland, worked his way up from peddling goods on Chicago streets, and eventually owned a saloon. Show business, he believed, was no path for a respectable Jewish family. But Emma's voice was the louder one, and from the moment Benjamin could hold an instrument, she shaped his life. By the time he was 3, the family had returned to Waukegan, settling in a modest home where Lake Michigan gleamed outside the window. That lake would become a source of distraction. Benjamin was supposed to practice violin for hours, but he often gazed out at the water instead. By 6, Benjamin received a half-size violin and began formal lessons under Professor Harlow, who charged 50 cents twice a week. His talent was undeniable, and locals began calling him a prodigy. Trips to Chicago to study with Hugo Korczak at the musical college followed, and the town even raised money to send him to Europe, a trip he famously declined. Benjamin's heart was already drifting away from classical music. He struggled in school, pulled pranks, and was expelled during his freshman year for mischief, including an incident with Limburger cheese that shut down his classroom. While his classmates struggled with arithmetic and grammar, Benjamin was already learning real-life lessons in entertainment. He played violin in the Barrison Theatre Pit Orchestra and absorbed the rhythms of comedy from performers who visited his father's saloon. When the Marx Brothers came to town in 1911, Minnie Marx noticed Benjamin's talent and offered him a spot on tour. His parents refused, fearing corruption, and he remained behind, a missed opportunity that would have changed everything. By 1911, at age 17, Benjamin left school and joined a vaudeville act with 43-year-old widow Cora Salisbury. They performed 4 shows a day across the Midwest, earning $7.50 a week. The act was steady, but trouble soon followed. In 1912, famed violinist Jan Kubelik threatened legal action over their similar names. Terrified, Benjamin briefly became Benny. Later, after another legal challenge, he finally settled on the stage name Jack Benny, combining sailor nicknames and a lucky dinner with comedian Benny Rubin. Jack's career accelerated. After Salisbury left in 1914, he partnered with pianist Lyman Woods. By 1916, they were earning $350 to $400 a week, a fortune at the time, performing in major theaters from Boston to San Francisco. Their act blended serious music with comic timing, but a fateful show at the Palace Theater in New York in 1917 flopped spectacularly. Audiences ignored their act, following an animal routine, and Jack was crushed. The setback led him to the Navy during World War I. Stationed at the Great Lakes Naval Training Center, Jack initially played violin for ceremonies. One night, during a talent show, the crowd began booing his performance. Fellow sailor Pat O'Brien yelled, "Tell a joke." Jack's improvised quip made the audience erupt in laughter. That moment crystallized his path. He was a natural comedian. Over the next months, performing as Izzy, he entertained thousands of sailors, discovering the power of timing, charm, and restraint. Sometimes one well-placed line outweighed an hour of music. After the war, Jack leaned into the persona he had developed in the Navy, the penny-pinching, stingy man who was everyman yet endlessly amusing. His solo act, Fiddle Phonology, blended violin playing with jokes about frugality. Audiences loved him because they recognized themselves in his humor. He wasn't mocking, he was part of the joke. Returning to vaudeville with Lyman Woods, he refined his timing, tightened his violin bits, and prepared for bigger stages. By 1924, at age 30, Jack reached Broadway. He deliberately played slightly off-key, transforming his classical skill into comedy. Critics hailed his act as fresh, a dry, sarcastic, self-aware performance that broke norms. The audience laughed at the man, not just his music. The Broadway success led to riskier projects, including The Great Temptations in 1926, where he pushed improvisation beyond the script. Backstage fights with directors were legendary, but Jack's confidence and timing were undeniable. Meanwhile, Jack's personal life was quietly unfolding. He met Sadie Marks, later Mary Livingstone, in a slow, awkward romance that began with a chance encounter at a department store in Los Angeles. By 1927, they married. True to his later reputation for small gestures with big meaning, Jack sent Mary a single red rose every day, a ritual that continued until his death nearly 5 decades later. The late 1920s and 1930s were a mix of triumphs and setbacks. MGM cast him in Hollywood Review of 1929, which earned money but exposed his weaknesses on film. Subsequent flops cemented his reputation as nervous and difficult to direct. Even so, Jack's comedic instincts persisted. In 1932, he transitioned to radio with the Canada Dry program. Initially, he played serious violin, but ratings lagged. Then he made the pivotal choice: he would make himself the butt of the joke, let others roast him, and play deliberately badly. Success was immediate. By 1934, Jack had fully embraced radio, creating the vault gag in 1945, an absurd fortress with alarms, guards, and hidden traps. The bit was pure theatrical comedy, yet it resonated deeply with audiences, symbolizing safety, thrift, and the humor of surviving hard times. The vault became a cultural touchstone, with fans writing letters asking for charity openings, believing it might be real. Jack's radio cast grew with iconic personalities: Don Wilson, Phil Harris, and Eddie Anderson, Rochester, the first black actor with a regular national role. Jack's insistence on treating Rochester as an equal on the show broke barriers, even confronting Southern stations that wanted him removed. From 1937 to 1945, Jack dominated radio, earning $25,000 a week by 1944, a staggering sum, yet he continued to project his stingy persona while quietly giving to war bonds and performing for the USO. Scandals punctuated Jack's career. In 1937, he fell for a jewelry scam involving a man claiming diplomatic immunity. Legal fines threatened his reputation, yet Jack and George Burns turned the incidents into comedy, integrating their missteps into radio shows. Similarly, film ventures like The Horn Blows at Midnight flopped, but Jack's self-deprecating humor transformed failures into material that endeared him to audiences. The move to television in 1950 marked another reinvention. On his CBS debut, Jack joked about failure and risked his reputation. Within 2 years, 20 million viewers tuned in weekly. He welcomed guest stars, innovated running storylines, and mentored young comedians, including Johnny Carson, passing along techniques in timing, expression, and self-deprecation that would influence generations. Behind the humor, Jack's real life was generous and quietly revolutionary. He promoted civil rights, supported colleagues like Eddie Anderson, funded youth programs, and maintained secret charitable giving. His cheap persona was an act, a comedy mask hiding a man who shaped entertainment history and touched countless lives. Jack Benny passed away on December 26, 1974, at 80, leaving a fortune of over $5 million, a priceless 1729 Stradivarius violin, and a legacy that transformed comedy. 3 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, for radio, television, and film, commemorate a career that spanned over 6 decades. His radio scripts, now being digitized and released in podcasts, allow modern audiences to experience his timing, humor, and the man behind the myth, decades after his final curtain call. From prodigy to comedian, from scandal to stardom, Jack Benny's life reminds us that the most enduring laughter often comes from blending skill with humanity, missteps with resilience, and performance with heart. And in the end, the vault, whether real or imagined, holds the story of a man who changed the world of comedy forever. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started.